Hey everyone, we all get it, right? Sharing is an amazing idea. Pooling our resources, our tools, our spaces to do something bigger than we could on our own, it sounds perfect. But let's be real, in practice, it can be an absolute nightmare. So today, we're going to dig into a new kind of digital infrastructure that's designed to finally get rid of all that friction. And this is the million-dollar question, isn't it? We start these collaborations with so much energy, sharing equipment, maybe an office, even splitting staff costs. But then they get bogged down, they get complicated, or they just fall apart. Why does this incredible idea so often crash and burn when it meets the real world? So before we get into what goes wrong, we've got to talk about why we even bother trying in the first place. The fancy term for it is mutualization. And honestly, the reasons organizations keep coming back to it are pretty powerful. Let's take a look. It really boils down to three big things. First, the economic side. I mean, it's a no-brainer, right? You pool your money and suddenly you can afford way better stuff. Then there's the strategic angle. When small groups band together, they get a much louder voice and become more resilient. And finally, there's the philosophical part. It's about walking the talk, working together to actually achieve that mission you all believe in. These are the goals that make it all seem worth the effort. Okay, but if the goals are so amazing, where's the disconnect? And that brings us to the villain of our story, friction. We're talking about all the hidden costs and the deep-seated problems that just grind these amazing collaborations to a halt. And here is Exhibit A. There's actually a great French term for this, surcharge de concertation. It basically means the hidden tax of endless meetings. You just want to make a simple decision, but instead you get trapped in these marathon negotiation sessions that can literally erase any of the money you hoped to save. It's exhausting. And then, of course, there's the classic trust issue. You're hoping everyone is going to pull their own weight, but then you smack right into the free rider problem. You know the one, where some people just take more than they give, or they don't follow through on their promises. Without some kind of real trust and accountability, the whole thing just falls apart. And the headaches don't stop there. Organizations are terrified of losing their sovereignty, losing control over their own stuff and their own decisions. Then you've got the absolute nightmare of administrative complexity, lawyers, contracts, maybe even setting up a whole new company just to manage the sharing. And finally, if you rely too much on one partner for something critical, you're making yourself incredibly vulnerable. It's these deep structural problems that make sharing so difficult. Okay, so after all that doom and gloom, this is where the story takes a turn. What if you could design an infrastructure that was built from the ground up to fight this friction? That is the whole idea behind Nondominium. And we're not talking about another app here. This is meant to be a totally new foundational layer for collaboration. Let's break that down, because those words are important. Organization agnostic. That just means the resource doesn't belong to any one group. It lives in a neutral space. Uncapturable means no central company like an Uber or an Airbnb can swoop in, take control, and start jacking up the prices. And natively collaborative? That means the rules for how you share are literally baked into the resource itself. It's part of its DNA. And this quote right here, it just nails the solution. See, instead of having a company act as the boss or the referee, the governance comes from rules that are literally embedded in the code. Those rules are checked and validated by the users themselves, by the peers, and it's all supported by a reputation system that's built right in. This is a massive shift in how we think about managing shared things.
All right, so that's the big idea. But how does Nondominium actually do it? How does it really fight all that friction we were just talking about? Let's get into the nitty-gritty.
So remember that whole surcharge of endless meetings? Well, Nondominion's answer is what's called machine-readable governance. Instead of arguing about the rules for using a shared 3D printer in a meeting every single week, those rules are coded directly into the printer's digital twin. Who can use it, when, for how long, it's all handled automatically by the software. No arguments, just code. Now, the secret sauce here is how it's all put together. You can think of it like digital Lego bricks. So you have one brick that's just your identity, that's Zoom person. You have another brick that represents the actual thing being shared, the Zoom resource. And then there's a third separate brick that holds all the rules, the Zoom governance. The magic is, because they're separate, you can just swap out the rules brick without touching anything else. It makes the whole system unbelievably flexible.
Okay, so automating the rules is a huge step, for sure. But that doesn't really solve the trust issue, does it? How do you deal with the free riders? How do you know who's reliable without having a manager watching over everyone's shoulder?
The answer is this really clever idea called private participation receipts, or PPRs. Here's how it works. Every single time you do something with a shared resource, you use it, you return it, you clean it, the system automatically generates a digital receipt. This receipt is cryptographically signed, which means it's basically impossible to fake. It's undeniable proof of what you did. And what this creates is a trust system that's based on cold, hard data, not just feelings. You get verifiable, tamper-proof records for every single action. This lets people build up a real reputation based on their actual performance. Were they on time? Did they return the tool in good condition? And it does all of this while protecting their privacy. You're replacing subjective arguments with automated, data-driven accountability. And what about that fear of losing control, that loss of sovereignty? Well, Nondominium is built on what's called an agent-centric architecture. And this is a huge deal. It means you own your identity. You own your data. That entire history of participation, your reputation, it all belongs to you, not some platform. You can take it with you and choose to show it to new groups to prove you're trustworthy, but you are always in control. So let's just zoom out for a second, because this technology isn't just about making it easier for a few nonprofits to share a projector. The vision here is aiming for a much bigger shift in how our entire economy is structured. This table just lays it out perfectly. Look at the models we have now, like Uber or Airbnb. A central company controls all the rules, they own all our data, and they take a massive cut of the value. Now look at the Nondominium model. The rules are shared, you own your data, and the value flows directly between the people actually doing the work. That's what makes the resource uncapturable. There's no middleman to capture it. So what you're seeing here isn't just a plan for a more efficient system. It's a blueprint for a genuinely peer-to-peer sharing economy, one that's designed from the ground up to be free of those deep structural flaws that come with having a giant company in the middle of everything. So I'll just leave you with this question to chew on. For pretty much all of human history, we've had to build these really complex, expensive social and legal systems just to manage the friction of working together. So what happens, what becomes possible, when that trust and that enforcement can be automated and baked right into the very things we're trying to share? That's the future Non-Dominion is trying to build.